Hello there, folks. Welcome to a random review. I'm your host, Curtis. Before I get started, though, I would like to address something that's kind of delayed this episode from coming out. Back in January, while I was actually filming some of the shots and stuff for this episode, my brother had to go to the emergency room, and about a day or two after he was in there, he passed away. It was rather sudden. He was only 44 years old. He left his wife and 2 kids behind. And on top of that, my computer crashed, of course. So, before I went home for the funeral, I took it into Geek Squad. Turned out my hard drive was about to fail. But thankfully, I got it into Geek Squad in time, and they were able to take everything off of it, put it on a new hard drive. But that took a week to do. Thankfully, that coincided with me having to go home for the funeral and stuff, so it wasn't a huge inconvenience or anything. But then I had to get the computer back, reinstall Adobe Premiere and everything to edit. Coincidentally, I also got a lighting kit in the mail. Yeah, I have Kurt's to use, but he's got it in his room. He's sleeping because it's, 1 in the morning. I just got home from work. I decided to light this thing up and test it out. And it's working pretty good. So anyway, without further ado, here's the review. In this episode, we are reviewing the SNES Mini. That's right, I got my hands on one without having to use a scalper. I'm just as shocked and surprised as you are. So for those of you who don't know, the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, as soon as they came out, scalpers bought a whole crap load of them and then put them on Amazon and eBay and other sites for well over the actual price. This thing costs only $80, yet you'll see it on Amazon for over $200, most cases. Sometimes you can find one lower than that, like closer to $100, but still, you're going to be paying a crap load more than the retail price if you go that route. In fact, before I found this, I actually found another one over at a comic book store, a little independent shop on the other side of town. But when I asked the guy if he was selling it, they told me no. It was only if you signed up for a new account with them, you were put into a raffle to maybe win a chance to get one. And I never ever go that place, so I was like, screw it, I don't really care. And went about my shopping. I was actually looking for games and stuff for Genesis Flashback, which I've also got. That can be a review for a different episode. But anyway, while I'm shopping, the guy says he called the owner, and the owner was willing to part with the NES Classic for a measly $299, or close to $300. And I just said, yeah, no, ain't gonna happen. He goes, well, it's hard to find. We're doing you a big favor. But the problem is the guy kind of let slip originally that they have a deal with Nintendo and can get these at any moment. So it's not like it's even scarce for them. And there's no way I was going to pay that much. It was not worth the asking price. So I said, forget it. And he even tried to push a NES Classic on me. And he said, well, I guess if you're not going to pay that for that, you're not going to want to buy the NES Classic either. And I said, yeah, that's pretty good guess there, buddy. And I haven't been back to that shop. About a week later, I was just happened to walk into a Best Buy on a different part of town. I usually go to one closer to me, but this one, I was just on that side of town, decided, hey, let's go take a look. And surprise, surprise, it was right there in a display case, and it was the last one left. They also had a crap load of Genesis flashbacks, but I had already got one, so that wasn't a huge deal. Anyway, if you are interested in buying one of these, I suggest to just be patient. If you really got to buy one online, try to get one that's either around $100 or less than $100. Don't go above $100 because otherwise you're getting ripped off. These things still are findable if you look hard enough. Try everywhere. Try all kinds of Best Buys, GameStops or Walmarts. Even Target might have them. I don't know. I haven't seen them at anything but that Best Buy in my area. So you might get lucky, you might not. Another thing you got to be careful of are bootlegs. That's right. People are making essentially emulators in cases that look like the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, but they're not. They're not really. If you look closely, you can tell the difference. They might look exactly like it, but zoom in on the picture, you might see instead of Nintendo on the front, you might see just entertainment system or something that says like Raspberry Pi on it because it's running off of Raspberry Pi or some other kind of emulation. And those are easy to spot because they will say they have hundreds of games, sometimes thousands. And what they don't tell you is that the majority of those games are crap. I might link some videos in the comments of what I'm talking about, but there's some reviews out there of these systems, and they may be for you. I don't know, but be careful because sometimes they fail on you, sometimes they crash, and a lot of times those like 6,500 games are a lot of duplicates and games that don't really work otherwise. So just be aware of what you're getting into. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Anyway, let's get to what you all came here to see, the review. And here it is, the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, or SNES Mini, or SNES Classic, whatever you want to call it. Well, I'm not going to call it a SNES. I don't know where you're from where that was normal, but we never called it that as a kid. I've never heard it until recently, so ain't gonna get me calling it a SNES. Because that just sounds like a sneeze. And that just blows. Anyway, comes with 21 games. I've already unboxed this. I'm having to reshoot this, so you'll have to forgive me. I don't have the footage anymore of me opening the box, but I'm going to show you what's inside of it anyway. Comes with an HDMI cable, which is very, very short, maybe 3 feet long, if that. So I recommend getting yourself a bigger HDMI cable, especially if you're like me and your HDMI input's all the way on the other side of the TV. It also comes with a USB cable that you use to plug into the wall, but that's also really short, probably about as short as the HDMI cable. And as you can see, it's kind of hard to stretch it out, so you'll have to bear with me here. And the USB cable, of course, plugs into this, which plugs into the wall. And of course, here's the console. It comes with 2 controllers, both of which have really short cables. So if you get one of these and you want it to reach further than not even arm's length, you're gonna have to get yourself an extender cable. As you can see, the cable is not very long at all. It's almost like Nintendo expects you to be right up close to your TV and that your input and your plugs are all going to be within reach. If you compare it to the extension cable, it's almost twice the size of the one that comes with the controller, which really extends your reach across the room. Otherwise, if you don't mind spending a little bit extra money, I recommend one of these controllers from 8BitDo. It comes with a 2.4 gigahertz wireless receiver that you plug directly into the controller port. It works with either the US version of the console or the Japanese/European version. It also comes with the European colors if that is what you want. I decided to go just with the purple ones because I wanted it to match the controllers that I still had with the unit. The controller itself feels really nice in your hands. It does not feel cheap at all. It actually feels just as good as the actual controller that comes with the unit, which that, by the way, also feels really good in your hands and feels almost better than the original controller. And I haven't noticed any kind of lag using it. The wireless receiver has the same input as a Wii controller. I think the classic one that you can use by plugging into the Wii chucks. So in theory, you should be able to use those with the SNES Classic as well. And because I only have 4 HDMI inputs, I have the Xbox One, Xbox 360, Nintendo Switch, Sega Genesis Flashback, cable box, and now the SNES Mini. I ended up getting a HDMI splitter off of the Wish app, which is actually really good. It gives me 3 extra inputs. As you can see with this splitter, I can turn on any of my systems and it'll automatically detect it and switch to it. But I can also turn on a different system. It gets the signal to it, starts right back up on that one. And there you go. But you can also push the button on the back and switch this way. I got my Genesis Flashback, the SNES Classic, of course, and the Xbox 360, all plugged into the same hub. But let's take a look at the console itself. You have a working power button, of course, a reset button that returns you to the menu during the games. The eject button and the console in ports don't work, of course. And to get to the controller ports, you actually remove this flap here and plug them in the front. And of course we have the back with the HDMI input and the USB input. It's a very nice unit, actually. Very well put together, does not feel cheap at all. So let's get this thing plugged in. Just take the HDMI cable and plug it in there, and the USB cable right in there, and that's plugged into the plug, which is plugged into an outlet. We're going to use the 8-bit controller, so I'm going to plug in the receiver into the controller port. So let's see what happens when I turn it on. Alright, now let's do the setup. This is the menu, and these are the games that are included. We've got Contra 3, Alien Wars, Donkey Kong Country, Earthbound, F-Zero, Final Fantasy 3, Kirby Superstar, 8 games in 1, Kirby's Dream Course, Mega Man X, Secret of Mana, Star Fox, Star Fox 2, which, if you didn't know, is an unreleased game for the SNES that Nintendo decided not to release because they wanted to focus on the Nintendo 64. Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Castlevania 4, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Mario Kart, Super Mario RPG, The Legend of the Seven Stars, Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Super Punch-Out!, Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, and there you go. That's all the games that are included on this. Let's pick Zelda to test out. So far, so good. Alright, come on. Yeah? Controls seem fluid. I have no problem at all. Select doesn't do anything. So you gotta press the reset button on the console to go to the menu. And let's see. So save, hit Y. And there you go. I can go back to that game at any point. Well, folks, there you have it. My review of the SNES Classic Edition. Do I recommend this? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Especially if you're not one of the hardcore collectors who have to have a console and all the cartridge games. Because, let's face it, one, they're going to be hard to find. Two, they're going to be a little on the expensive side, but depending on how rare the game is. But three, they're eventually going to fail. They're getting old, and unfortunately, technology doesn't last forever. So this is going to be a nice alternative, especially for those of you who aren't hardcore collectors. Now, I will say one criticism I have about this, besides all the short wires, of course, is that there is no option to use a cartridge. And that's just, let's just face it, that's a short-sightedness, I think, on Nintendo's part. You got the Sega Genesis flashback that does have that ability. And while the flashback does have its issues, which I'm not going to go into here, that's still a pretty cool option. Because that's only got a set amount of games. And yes, you can hack it, but you run the risk of breaking it. You can always get cartridges and use them on that. So that's one place that this doesn't actually succeed at, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion. But it's still worth the money. I still say, be careful when you go to buy it. Don't spend more than you have to. Try to find it at a retail store, because it's only $80 versus, you know, the huge amount of prices you're going to get from scalpers online. And I've seen some on there that are actually taking this unit and apparently adding extra games to it. I don't know how well you can trust those, though. And I don't know how legal that is either, but who knows? Maybe because they already purchased it, it's technically theirs, they can alter it and put it back out there, but that's not for me to figure out. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for joining me. I wish it was under better circumstances, but show must go on, right? I'll see you guys next time.